Over the past 4 years, I've taken on nearly 24 crew members from all over the world. Most were helpful and an absolute joy to have aboard. But recently, I took on someone who turned out to be a total nightmare. By far, the single worst crew member I've ever had. And after talking with several other sailboat captains, I realized I wasn't alone in my experiences. In fact, many of them had many worse experiences than I did. So here are just some of the untold truths of sailboat crew. Anyone who crews does so knowing that they're expected to help out. And really, most people that crew aboard a boat jump at the opportunity to help out in any way they can. But there's always a few bad apples who just don't see it that way. Maybe they thought this would be a free vacation, or they wanted to just be like it is on Instagram, which isn't reality. In one situation, it turned out a person's parents had been fully supporting them for years, and that mentality, I guess, stuck when they got to the boat. But the bottom line is this. If you're crewing on any boat, you should be helping. At least doing the basics of what you're asked for, if not helping out in small ways here or there, if not trying to find small ways of helping. It takes a ton of work to keep a sailboat running, more than just what the captain can do by themselves, especially if there's other people on board who are enjoying all the same benefits. It's really simple. This is honestly the biggest common factor I've noticed in talking with all the other captains. And it's a simple situation. A sailboat takes a ton of time, energy, and money to be out in these beautiful places for people to enjoy. So if you're just hopping on for a couple of weeks of fun, well, there's been years and sometimes even decades of work to get that boat to that location. And if you consider what it would cost to rent that same boat in that same location and do all the fun things you're doing, and I Googled this, you're looking at around $800 to $2,400 per day. So imagine you're getting all of these benefits of food, lodging, maybe you're being taught how to sail, teaching spearfishing or paddleboarding, freediving, surfing, whatever, getting all of these things, and you're not paying and you're not even being grateful. It breaks our heart, it really does. And again, this is talking to many other captains who have experienced far worse. A boat is not a house. We don't have unlimited water, we don't have unlimited electricity. So it's really difficult, and it's not always intentional, mind you, but it's really difficult when somebody comes on the boat and they take a 10-minute shower. Yeah, that's a lot of water, and I'm producing all my own water that I need electricity to produce. So you're wasting two resources right there. And it's even worse when you see someone not even trying to jump in the ocean and rinse off, especially when in a place that has beautiful, clean water. The bottom line is, if you're on a sailboat, you need to adapt because it's a different lifestyle. You can't do all the same things that you would do back at a home on land that you would do on a boat, just not the same place. All right, this sounds kind of crazy, but it's true. There are plenty of people who get on sailboats and don't like being told what to do, and it absolutely blows my mind. So it's really simple. There's a captain, and then there's the crew. The captain knows what needs to be done on the boat, how it needs to be done, and when it needs to be done. You relay that to the crew of what they can do and they're capable, or teach them what they need to, and they do it. Super simple. But there's some people who, like I said, don't like being told what to do. And these aren't like teenagers. These are full-grown adults who, honestly, just in their normal everyday life, if it wasn't at a job site, no one ever tells them what to do, and they've just gotten very used to it. Gotten very used, I think, to feeling very special, and I totally get it, but when you're on a sailboat, it just doesn't work that way. You need to be able to take instructions because you're not the boss, the captain is. Like I've said before here, it takes a lot of time, effort, and money to run a boat. So when I've asked someone before in the past, hey, can you buy your share of the groceries so at least I'm not losing money? I feel that's a pretty reasonable expectation, and most people have been able to meet that no problem. But occasionally, I'd even have a few people who we get to the grocery store and we become incredibly stingy. And honestly, it was very disrespectful to think about all the money that I'm spending just to have them on the boat, and now then they want me to as well pay for their way. It's really difficult to deal with. In the past few months, I've actually decided to change it, and I'd say, hey, you know what, fine, you don't want to pay for groceries. I'm gonna add a few more chores. You're gonna maybe, scrub up on the deck, maybe help me with the bottom of the boat, something like that. And it goes back to the laziness and ungrateful portion. So these really are just people who don't want to contribute really anything, time, money, or effort, but they do want all these benefits. And thankfully, these people are few and far between. This is one, thankfully, I've never had anybody do intentionally, and it's pretty rare to hear about somebody who does try to do it intentionally. It's more something that just happens along the way, and it's just difficult to deal with. And it's just, again, one of those truths of taking on crew. There's a lot of gear on the boat that is sort of new to someone who's never been on a boat before. So you might have spearfishing gear or paddle boards or just even the boat itself, and knowing how to handle everything on here can be pretty difficult. Even something like my cabinets, they have a special way to pull them out. Somebody who doesn't know that, and I see a lot of new people grab it and just try to yank the thing out, that can be pretty stressful because if they keep doing that too much, they're gonna break it. Kind of conversely though, there's certain things on the boat where you have to really manhandle them as hard as you can, like the winches and stuff. So this one isn't really, I don't think, anything intentional. It's just something that's difficult to teach people along the way. This is something I've only had to deal with in a limited amount, but talking to some of my other friends and other boat captains, it sounds like it's a serious issue out there. Essentially, it works like this. A captain who knows the capabilities of the boat and the weather windows decides where the boat goes. Will it be this anchorage, that anchorage? Will we do a passage, a day sail, whatever it will be. Myself, I like to talk to the crew and say, hey, what do you guys think about this spot and this spot? But sometimes you get people who try to demand, no, I want to go here, no, I want to do this, or complain about it. Listen, if you're crew, you ultimately don't have a say. It is up to the captain, especially considering he's the one who's paying for everything and making it all happen. Be happy and enjoy that you're there for the ride, and if you can, politely offer, hey, I would like to go here or like to go there. I think any reasonable captain would listen to that. Otherwise, be happy with the journey. This is a tough one, and honestly is one of my biggest fears since before I even got the sailboat. What happens if you get someone on your boat who turns out to be absolutely crazy? Well, I interview all my crew extensively that might be coming to the boat, and it's one of the first questions I ask them. Do you have any history of mental illness? And so far, most of them have said no. A few have said yes and explained it to me, and I told them, hey, it just won't work. It's just not right for me. But there has been, especially recently, a case where someone came onto my boat and they didn't tell me some of their mental illness history. And this ended up coming out in a big way, and it was a really difficult situation. So I would just say to all the other captains out there, try to vet people as best you can. And to anyone who's thinking about joining a boat, vet the captain as well. You want to make sure he's not crazy, but also check yourself. Make sure you're not bringing problems from your life onto their boat, because a boat is a really small place to have those sort of problems. This is one most people wouldn't think of, but is really important on a boat. See, it's such close quarters here that you really need to give each other as much space as you can when you can. For sure you want to be together to enjoy all the fun times, but most people aren't used to being elbow to elbow with somebody on a daily and hourly basis. This has been a problem for me a few times when I've had crew who either didn't want to leave the boat or wouldn't leave the boat without me. Basically never giving me a chance to breathe and just have time to myself. It's pretty simple. Just get away from the boat when you can, talk to your captain, talk to your crew. It should be a simple conversation and be worked out. This is a tough one. On my boat, and I know many of the other friends of mine who are captains as well, we like to teach everything that we can to anybody who's coming that wants to learn. And most people are very receptive to that. But some people are flat out bad students, just like some people are bad teachers. It's really difficult though when you're trying to teach someone and they snap back at you. That's something I've had to deal with this year that honestly was really hurtful. If you're on a boat, you should be learning what you can when you can. Sometimes it's critical for the sailboat, but if it's not and it's something you want to learn, make sure you're doing everything you can to be a good student about it. This is one of those things a lot of people think happens more than it actually does. For me, it's only happened, I can think of once, and it was somewhat recently, this past year, where someone nearly killed me on the boat. Now, it's never even come close to being anything intentional, but the easiest way to do it, and it's what happened with me, is someone almost ran me over with the dinghy. They were only, I would say, inches above me. It almost clipped my fins. It was incredibly scary. And when I got up, I was pretty relaxed. I talked to them about it, and it turned out they didn't know the concept of distance. And I'm not talking metric or imperial. I just mean the concept of distance as a whole. That to me was an absolute shock. Everyone I try to take on my boat as crew, I assume they have a basic level of knowledge of simple things, like distance. This person didn't, so I had to actually spend time and teach them distance itself. It was really difficult, really frustrating, and it brings me back to one of my other topics here about being a bad student. It was something they never really got the hang of, and I could never trust them in the dinghy again. So, there's really not much advice on that. Just be careful if somebody else is in the water. The other way it normally happens, if you're at the helm, somebody might do an accidental jibe. You really need to make sure that the captain's not up ahead of you, no other crew members, nobody else on the boat is up ahead, because the boom is probably the other easiest way you can kill someone on a boat. Just gotta be careful. This is something that happens much more often than you'd think, and it's pretty simple to understand why as I explain it, I think. Basically, I take on crew to help me with things like sailing, so I can take a break here and there, or hopefully being in the dinghy. But sometimes they're not quite as good at it, or they're not as helpful with it, and that's fine. I'll spend the time to teach them, but sometimes that takes a long time to teach them. And basically what a lot of times you'll end up with is by the time somebody actually leaves the boat, they're just reached that point of where they're useful. So effectively you spend about a month sometimes in my case, and more than that in some other people I know, where you teach them everything and they're not really of help while they're there. You think about all the time and effort you put into trying to get them to help you with everything, and then they just leave. So it's very frustrating. If you're on a boat and you're crewing, try to make sure that you're more help than you are work for them. This is something that thankfully hasn't been a big problem for me, outside of a few cell phone power cables that have gone missing, which I don't think that was anything intentional. But talking to some other captains, I have heard some horror stories where crew they'd taken on in the best of circumstances tried to steal money or tried to steal other things on the boat. It's definitely something to watch out for, but I feel like it's the not so obvious things you got to watch out for on a boat. Stealing is just one of those, hey, double check who you have that's coming onto your boat, try to vet them. And other than that, you just hope for the best, because really you have to be able to trust who's coming onto your boat. That's very important. This goes deeper than just not being helpful on a boat. I've taken on certain people because they had a specific skill set. Take, for instance, a professional photographer I took on the boat one time. And this example is mirrored actually by two other captains that I know directly, which I thought was interesting. But effectively, I took on this photographer for just that, for their photography skills. And about a week into them being on the boat, I noticed they'd only taken literally like 4 photos. So I asked them what was going on with that. And they told me that they were a studio photographer, not a travel photographer, which really surprised me because I said, hey, I never said I have a studio on my boat. And it just comes down to being of help and being of use on the boat. It was something that really bothered me, and in the future I just won't put up with. But at the time I was just flat out shocked that somebody would come to the boat with a skill set, talk about how useful that will be, and then not actually use it. At the end of the day, if things don't work out with either a bad crew member or a bad captain, it's no big deal, you both just go your separate ways. There's no reason for 2 people to be miserable on a boat. But what if a bad crew member won't leave? This is one of my biggest fears, and it happened to me just a few months ago. But what if a bad crew member won't leave? This has always been one of my biggest fears. And that's why it's something I tell all potential crew members that I'm interviewing to come to my boat. You need to have your own funds to travel to and from the sailboat. It sounds really obvious, right? Who would want to be stuck with somebody they don't want to be stuck with? Most people get this and are adult enough to have all their own finances together. But recently, I had a horrible situation where when after so much stress I told someone they had a week to leave, they told me they couldn't. I come to find out later, they didn't have any money of their own. Their parents were paying for everything, and they didn't want to go back to their parents for more money. It was incredibly stressful and completely avoidable. Thankfully, after a few days, they were able to hop on another boat, but this is not something anyone should ever have to go through. If you're looking to join a boat, have your own way off. If you're looking to join a boat, make sure you have finances to actually leave that boat. Not just for your own sake, but for the captain's sake as well. I go through a lot of work to interview potential crew to come join my sailboat, but there's only so much I can do. Opening up my boat to so many strangers over time will eventually yield a few bad apples and one very rotten one. And that's just how I look at it. A few bad apples in the bunch, because honestly, the rest of them are great. But if you think anything I've said is too harsh or an unrealistic expectation, go talk to another boat captain. Or better yet, go to boat yourself and see how much work it takes to get all of this out here. It'll give you a whole other level of appreciation for what it actually takes. Also, I'd like to point out there's plenty of bad captains out there. So if you're looking to crew, I'd simply say this: be helpful, be thankful, and be ready to leave if things get bad. You'll be doing yourself and the captain a favor. Well, I hope you found this video insightful on a topic that's hardly ever talked about publicly. This was hands down the most difficult video for me to make, for one simple reason: I don't usually talk about all the negative things I have to go through to live this incredible lifestyle. I'd much rather focus on the positives that are here than all the negatives. But I'm realizing I don't want to paint an unrealistic expectation for this lifestyle. I want to show people and tell people how it really is out here. And this is one of them, that you don't always get amazing and great crew. There's plenty of bad people out there who are just lazy, apathetic, or worse. And those people, you just gotta turn the other cheek and tell them to move on their way. There's really not much more you can do about it than that. This lifestyle is like a roller coaster, with extreme lows and extreme highs. But when those high days do come and you have the right people around you to share it with, it's amazing, and I don't want to give that up for a few bad people. And that's why I'm just gonna keep on sailing.